So let's try to summarize what the problem is. Right? This is a software company, and we said in our TOC flow, right? Apply it to software, and just let's try to think through it, right? What is it? When do they make money?
When they're selling their softwares?
When the software is actually being applied, right? A lot of times you're not always selling, and maybe doing another release, right? But when the release really happens, and it is tested, and it is actually deployed, that is when really the throughput should be counted, right? Now that may be that you may be selling a software, but the steps that are there in creating a software is there is design, there is development, you can call it coding, there is unit testing after that, right? And let's call it unit testing here. And once that is done, then you start doing system integration testing. That means now many coding branches or strings will come into, and you will integrate something into, and you start testing it. Once you do that testing, then you are in a customer environment. Until now, you were in a development environment. You are safe. Right? Now you go out and do something called UAT, which is user acceptance testing. That user is really taking your software and testing it. And if it works, then you have actually deployed. Right? So if you compare to our analogy of TOC, the flow that we had drawn, if you go from here to here and if you deploy, that is when you really make money. Right? Now, what Yoav is trying to explain is this, that here, Agile has come in a big way and tried to break batches. So what has Agile done? And if you are, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Scrum and Agile, and so it has done is basically it is broken down into very small batches, and you do sprints and you do very fast development. Okay, it's good, but then look at it from system approach. The moment you get here, you're stuck because nobody has applied Agile to here. So it gets very fast here, and then what you do, you batch here in a very big batch because you have to create environments for testing, right? Environment for testing is all the hardware that you need to set it up in a certain way to behave. And all that is gone for a toss because you're really not producing anything. It's just WIP. It's just inventory, right? So that's what he is trying to describe is that, look, all of this got up to here, and the entire industry has gone and implemented lean and agile and software development, and they have adopted it in a big way. It doesn't solve the problem. Make sense? So that's the problem statement. So anybody clear about what they're doing? Yes?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
To be a little more clear. So it sounds like they're taking the whole project, breaking it up into functional components that can be deployed and made live separately. So they're building the system in production piece by piece, like a functional component. So it sounds like that is the piece going through and then getting on live. Am I right there?
Bingo.
That's it.
So what you've articulated is the real change. So I don't know if you were there in the beginning, but we articulated how does any organization make money? And it makes money when you do something from the beginning to the end as fast as possible. Now what happens during all these steps is that people try to locally optimize. And then they try to locally optimize, there are big batches. And because of that, the deployment in large software companies could be like as long as 9 months. right? So the key change here is if you break the batch, but the key change is it testable and deployable? Think about how the entire organization is subordinating, right? The design people would do some design before in the previous mode, right? They didn't care about whether it is testable and deployable. They just cared about what specs am I writing, right? They focused on specs, but they were completely detached with whether it can be tested separately, whether it can be deployed separately. So it didn't make money for the company. It'll go get stuck somewhere because now you are waiting for another set of design, another set of coding, another set which can be bashed together and tested. So it's a big change. The software design people, who are the architects of the software, they have to think slightly differently. And they have to think, if I do this design and if I do this batch, can it be deployed by itself? Is this value to the customer? And that is a big change. Right? That is how you're subordinating to the value. In this, the constraint is what? Constraint is how fast can I add value to the customer, right? And the customer obviously is not going to be happy if you do a release in 9 months. And I'm using release and deploy interchangeably, they're not, right? Deployment could be something else, it could be just a change request, like a small bug fix or something like that, right? But the companies that have used this, do you know how much they have gained? Do you know how Amazon, how many deployments they do a day now with this? 23,000. It's just a mindset change, right? That's an important thing, right? If you think and I want you to just take this as something, like all these companies that are very, very successful, like Amazon, like Netflix, they have the deployment rate way higher than the companies that are not doing it. But the basic change is they have identified, I make money when I go from here to here very fast. Think about that was the original time it took. Now what is happening is that you break it into small design, you build it, you system test it, and the user acceptance test comes here and you deploy right here. First deployment here versus a big batch deployment over there. There's a huge difference. And the more they adopt it, this is in some sense a culture change in the company. Right? You beginning to add value every day.
Is it like you start with 2 features and then every week or every month you start adding more features into that main application like that?
You are definitely breaking the batch. But you have to think about not just 2 features. Which 2 features can go all the way and can be deployed and will add value. Okay. Right? So there's another thought process, can it add value? There's another thought process, can it be tested? So what it does is that while we are trying to do from here to here to make it faster, because these questions are being asked, can it add value? Can I test it? It requires a feedback loop and collaboration with everyone. Because I, as a design engineer, can't really design it without getting an input from the testing people, right? So it naturally forces people to collaborate. And it forces people from here to collaborate with what you are going to release. Is it going to be testable? Is that going to be deployable? So it creates an environment, and that is why DevOps has taken off like really, really well. Yes?
So I come from an automotive industry, and over there we followed waterfall model, and like even for a small piece of software release, we had a lot of quality processes. So my question is, if we plan to move to agile, will the design and development not have those processes, and will it not lengthen the time again? Because what I know about waterfall is, even if there is a small change, it has to go through a large process of quality checks. And so if we are breaking it into sprints, so I am asking, will those processes follow each of the sprints?
The process remains the same, right? You will have to check. Waterfall is a different way of planning. Waterfall assumes a certain amount of batching, right? Going from waterfall to agile was to break the batch. Because agile, you were doing certain number of sprints, you would define an epic, you would define a story, and if you're all aware of how agile does, right? And then you would basically break it down into different sprints and you would try to complete that scope, right? Waterfall assumes that you have a big bang thing, you plan all the features, and you create kind of a Microsoft project plan for that. Right? So it went into very big batches, the movement, right? That is what this picture is at the top. That is your waterfall, right? When you have a large batch, right? What does happen is that you are pushing so when I push one thing to you, it's easier for you to check that one thing. If I push 20 things to you as a batch, it starts to become harder for you to check 20 things because I'm handing off to you batch. Right? And this is the batch that keeps moving. So that's what Yoav, if you notice, right? The paint analogy in the car, right? Remember the Ford Model T, like you can get any car as long as it's black, right? That's used to be. Right? But what was the deal? They had a big batch going into the oven, the autoclave that was there, right? And once they would wait for 1,000 cars to, suddenly the downstream will keep getting 1,000 cars. They will get hit by like avalanche. And then there is no way processes work. Neither the quality process work when you get hit by such a high web. None of these things work. So all this is saying is, one, it takes a long time to get value. Two, every time you get hit by a big batch, quality is actually more suspect. Right? All this is doing is setting up a system by which you can make the cycle and the feedback loop really, really short. So something that you can today in the morning think about, in the evening you can press a button and say, oh, it works. That's the kind of speed that they are thinking. But I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, I was just thinking whether, like, how easy it is for companies to move from waterfall to agile, and what are the things it is dependent on.
It depends on, yeah, so that's good. It may require automation.
Because the way I used to work is, like, even if I had a large piece of software development, we internally used to break it down and used to test it. So, like, my perspective is, it is kind of agile what I was doing internally, but we called it as a waterfall model.
Let me ask you this. You may be doing all the right things, right? The question you have to ask, and this is a thought I want to leave with you, whether you are in software or whether you are in somewhere else, right? Whenever we are working in our own area, and we get a project, and we are doing something, are we asking one question? How does this fit in the big picture? What am I doing? Is it going to get stuck in somebody else's queue? Or is it going to produce the throughput that I'm looking for, right? So you may be doing in your area the right stuff, right? But when it goes to UAT, for example, does it get stuck because they are not using the methods that you are using? So in the end, it didn't produce value that it was supposed to. So you should look, that's why I'm saying I'm not sure, but you should look at the entire process. If entire process is leaned out, you're doing the right thing. I'm not saying everybody is doing the wrong thing. But this is where I think the industry trend is this, that people have applied up to design and this, a good agile methodology. When it came to system integration test, because of the high setup cost, because of the user acceptance testing, because nobody wants to go to the customer and say, okay, let's do this today and let's do this today. It's a big batch that you say, okay, I have a finished product, here customer, take this, let's test this. So nobody has the guts to really, but the customer is realizing, in Yoav's case, AT&T started. AT&T said, we are going to do DevOps. So they had no choice but to do it. Here is the reverse. You're going to AT&T and you have to say, we are doing DevOps, let's change. That's the difficulty. Any questions? I think, yes, sir.
So we don't yet have our designers thinking like this.
Yeah.
But when we wait for the design, and so it's kind of, we have a rough sometimes, but it doesn't, they don't think along the lines of the pieces that can go out and get deployed. So what we're doing is we're testing components, we're developing components, functional components that can be tested separately. So we are doing that with development and the test. But then what we're doing is sometimes we are releasing code that's been tested, but it's behind a flag.
Mm.
And so that gets out there and gets in production, gets in all the, I mean, it's not seen though. We actually have a flag. And so at the point that we've gotten these functional components and it's all complete, then we turn on that functionality and we do this regularly. So we get the code flowing through, but once it's all built out there in production, then we turn it on.
Right. Right.
So a little different.
There is some batching at the end, what you're saying, right? Because you wait till the end and there are a lot of features that accumulate, and then you turn it on, because there's somewhere
We actually have tested, each of these, because we turn on the flag during testing.
Yeah.
We say, okay, this is how it's going to be like.
Right.
So then,
But I think if you are new to POC, I think all I would suggest is anytime you do a project, anytime you do something as a student, ask for the big picture. Ask from throughput perspective, how does it add value in the end? You might get some good insights.